are the four foundations of mindfulness? First one is mindfulness on the body. Second, mindfulness on feelings. Third, mindfulness on the mind or the states of mind. Then fourthly, mindfulness on mental objects or the Dhamma. Now with regards to the Dhamma, there are various aspects of the Dhamma that we should become aware. We should develop our mindfulness. We should arouse our mindfulness. With regards to the Dhamma, there are various aspects. The first thing that we have discussed, we have talked about was what? The 5 mental hindrances. The 5 mental hindrances. Then today we will talk about 5 what? The 5 aggregates or the Panchakhanda. Do you know them? This is another aspect of the Dhamma which we should contemplate, which we should relate to again and again. The first one, what is the meaning of aggregate? Actually, this is the English translation for the word Panchakhanda. This word is made up of Pancha and Khanda. 2 words, Pancha, Khanda. When you join them together, you put an extra K. This is called grammar, Pali grammar, Sandhi, Panchakhanda. Pancha means what? You know Panchasila. Panchanivarana. What is Panchanivarana? Mental hindrances. What is Pancha Indriya? 5 mental faculties. This is Panchakhanda. Khanda means, it means heap. H-E-A-P, heap, 5 heaps of bundles. And, when you go to the paddy field, you see how after they have harvest the paddy, then they cut all the stalks and they put them one layer after layer, right? That is what you call heap. Heap. They heap them up together. They stack them up together. That's what you call khanda, heap or bundles. Put them together. And the English word for that is the aggregate, 5 bundles of 5 aggregates. Here, these aggregates of what? They are the aggregates of energies, mental and physical energies. Now the first one is Rupa. Rupa here refers to the aggregate of the body. In other words, or sometimes we say the form, Rupa, form or body. Or we can also use the term physical process. Right? Now do you know what Rupa is about, what the body is about? Remember when we talk about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we use the word Kaya. Kaya, strictly referring to the body. And when we talk about Rupa also, it means the same thing with regards to the body. And when we talk about the body, what do we talk about? You can understand your body, what your body is made up of, this basic elements. Pathavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu. Parallelly in China, during the 3rd century BC, around the 3rd century BC, the the philosophy of the 5 elements. You know the 5 elements? Huh? What are the 5 elements? And whatever branch of study, whatever you want to study, whether it is science, whether it is whatever branch of studies actually will involve the study of these basic elements. The study of the physical part, and these elements, the interaction of these elements together. Now, although we divide all these elements and we divide them into these elements of earth, water, wind, fire, but actually in anything, in this pan, for example, what is this pan? What would you say? What kind of elements here? Earth element. Come on. You say water element. Yes. You say all the? Sure? How many of you agree with him? He say all the 4. There you are. Some don't agree with you. And how many of you say earth element only? How many of you say water element only? Earth and water only. Earth and water element only. There is no gas? No gas inside? He's right. And actually, in anything, you will find the 4 elements inside. No? We cannot separate them totally. We cannot totally separate them. You know, there is the earth element. Those of you who study chemistry, you will study how many of you have studied chemistry? You know the bonds. And remember the structure, the structure of the molecule. They have the bonds, and the element, what you call earth element alone cannot cannot exist by itself. It has to be bonded by some other compound. And so the water element, the hydroxyl element, OH group, has to bind them together. And then also in this you can also find heat element. There is heat element. Do you know that? You know? And those who study science can understand that there is what you call the latent heat. Latent heat of fusion, latent heat of vaporization. There is latent heat inside here. And then also there are some gaseous elements in here also. That's why they are, if you write, you smell, some people smell how from this element it vaporizes. So inside have little bit, but because this is hard, this is solid, so we call this the dominant character of this pan is a Patavi element. We call this a solid. We see it in the form of the pan here because of the predominant characteristic, the hardness of this pan. That is why we refer this to as a solid, solid structure. But in the solid there are also other elements. Now, when you take a glass of water, right? What do you call? You call that water, right? But in the water, what do you find in the water? Huh? In the water, what else do you find? Do you find earth element there? Can you find earth element in the water? How many of you say no? Hands up. You cannot find earth element in the water, is that right? You take water, not distilled water. Don't take distilled water, take natural water. You think there are no earth elements there? What? Yes. That's right. Now even you get the water from the rainwater, what do you find? What kind of minerals you find in the rainwater? What? Yes, you find dust particles. Not only dust particles, you also find, because of the carbon dioxide in the air, the carbon elements there come into, and you can get certain carbonate, and then the dust particles all in there. Your water is not free, totally free from all dust. So you will find the earth element is there. There is the water. It is called water. We call it water because it has the dominant characteristic of what? Cohesion, of the fluidity, cohesion, stickiness. Is there fire element in the water? There is the heat element in the water. That's what you call latent heat in the water. Then what else? Do you have gaseous element in the water? Yes, you have gaseous element in the water. No, that's right. Now when you breathe in and breathe out, what do you breathe in and out? Oxygen. Only oxygen? Pure oxygen? Or what are the impurities? You breathe in also some dust particles, dust particles. And you breathe in. Your breath, there is heat element in your breath also, right? There is heat element, right? And there is also a water element, moisture, the air, right? So you see everything, what we normally call the water or heat or other elements, they are actually made up of these basic elements. The properties, the characteristics of these elements are in any one form, whether it's solid, liquid, gas or fire, heat. You will find everything in there. The only thing is that the characteristic, the dominant characteristic, then we call it, if cohesion is dominating, that we call it water. So you can understand this. We cannot totally separate them like that. We must put them together also. Then the second, yes. Yes, it is called the physical process because those elements of earth element, water element, wind element and heat element, they are not mental energies, they are physical energies. No? They are physical energies. They are inorganic, inorganic forms. They are called physical energies, right? Because we divide our body, we divide this being, this self, into physical and mental and physical, right? Then the other, Vedana. What is Vedana? Feelings, right? How many kinds of feelings have you got? What are the 3 kinds? In terms of feeling process, right? Your feelings, is it permanent? Permanent or impermanent? Huh? Does your feeling change? Huh? Change. Feeling also change. So, when there is Sanya. What is Sanya? In the Pali term Sanya, in English is perception. What is perception? That's right. Your ability to cognize, your ability to see an object and you recognize that object. Now, I ask you, what is this? What is this? Huh? What? Marker pen. If I take this to the jungle and I ask the Sakai there, what is this? You think he will say marker? What do you think he will say? I do not know what he will say. So why did you say marker then? Last time when the whiteboard was newly introduced, they all called it blackboard. You laugh, but when it was newly introduced, no? Remember, I think we started using whiteboard here only a few years ago. And then that same year when we introduced using this whiteboard, then we tell them, please go to the blackboard and write. Then they say, oh, now you all know it is whiteboard. But this is our perception. What you have learned, right, when you were young in school, you learn that this thing is called this one is called that. And then when you see the form and then you associate it to what you have learned, then you recognize it. You are able to recognize it, and then you think, oh, this is like that, this is like that. Understand? Your ability to cognize some sound, what you see, form, and also the sound. Can you hear that sound? What sound is that? The sound of the bird chirping. Can you? Chirp, chirp, chirp. You know it is bird sound. First you hear the sound, and then after that, next thing is you recognize it. You recognize that it is bird sound. But sometimes your perception is wrong. And I remember once when I was staying in the forest, I hear this, pa, 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 pa. No? What is that? Oh, very clever. Very clever. I did not know. I thought, pa, pa, pa. I thought it is dark. So I took my torchlight and I heard the sound coming very near. No? And I put the torchlight there. I cannot see anything. Then I give metta to that animal. I do not know what it is. So I say, metta, may you come near. Then closer. And then I hear it just below my kuti, just below the heart. I hear just, very loud. And I took the torchlight, look at this thing. I cannot find the dog. I thought it was a duck, or at least a wild duck, no? But could not find it. And in the morning, I saw small frog, but very loud sound, no? Ooh. When they make one sound, ha, another one, pa, ba, you know, the sound. Then I learned, oh, that's the male, that's the female sound. They call one another, no? So the sound we perceive, we have the perception, we perceive the sound, and then now I recognize. When I hear that kind of sound, literally I recognize it is frog sound, no? So this is how we learn, and then we are able to cognize, or sometimes we are able to remember the memory. These are what we call perception process. At night, when we talk about snakes, and then after that you go upstairs, and there is no light on, only you can see the shadow from outside light, and then you see somebody's belt on the floor. What do you think? Sometimes you think it is snake. You open your eyes, switch on the light, you see it is only belt or some strings. Here it's not so common, but when you go in the forest, in the jungle, and because in your mind you're always afraid that there may be some snakes crawling, so our mind only look out for that, and then suddenly we see some strings there, and we think it is snake. That is how we perceive. And is that perception right or wrong? Wrong perception. So our perception can be right sometimes, can be wrong also. Because the perception is conditioned by what we are thinking, by what we have heard, by what we have learned. Then the next one is sankhara. You know what sankhara is about? Sankhara? What is sankhara? We say mental formation. You know what mental formation is? Did you experience any mental formation this morning? You experienced sankhara this morning? Where did you experience it? Try to observe these different processes, and when you calm down your mind and just observe the sankharas come and go, and don't cling to them, because they are all conditions, they are not real. Then now you know what sankharas are? No? There are actually two meanings of this word sankhara. One meaning is when it is used in another context. Have you heard this reciter before? Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya dhammino upaccittva nirucchanti tesang upasamo sukho. Have you heard this? When did you hear this? When? Eating time. You hear this one? That's it. We hear this during the funeral. When with cremation, during the time of cremation, when sometimes in the funeral houses, right, they invite the monks. Then the monks will go there and then recite these verses. Anicca vata sankhara upada vayadamino upajjitva nirujjanti tesang upasamo sukho. Here, because the idea is to remind the members of the bereaved family, those who have lost their beloved ones. So we go there. When we recite this, it is to remind them that anicca vata sankhara, that all component things are subject to change. Upada vayadamino, whatever the Dhamma is conditioned, rising, and upada vaya dhammino, the nature of things is such it will arise and it will cease. Upajjitva nirujjanti, whatever has a reason will have to cease. That means when we are born, from birth to death, the life flux swings. Upajjitva nirujjanti tesang upasamo sukho. When there is no rising, there is no falling. That is the what you call sukho. That is the highest kind of happiness. No more rising and falling. No more birth, no more death. That is the highest. So that is what we recite. The meaning is very meaningful if they understand this thing and if they can contemplate. The moment they get into the right contemplation, then there is no suffering. Yes. We can give you that verse. It is found in your chanting book, I think. And it have? No. Then I will give you later on. Anicca vata sankhara. Oh yes, you find it in the blue book, in the blue one. The four guardian contemplations. You will find this thing. This one will be on, I think it is on the impermanent reflection on death. What page is it? Page 54. On page 54, you look and you can see. Can you find that? Page 58, yes, page 58. Anicca vata sankhara upada vayadamino upajjitva nirujjanti tesang upasamo sukho. This is very important for you to learn. To contemplate that again and again. Anicca vata sankhara. Okay. And here this word sankhara. Sankhara here, in this context, it means component things. All things that are made up of other things, they are compounded by other things, they are called sankhara. This can also be called sankhara. This can also be called sankhara. This whole building can also be called sankhara. Understand? Everything that is made up, everything that is compounded is called sankhara. So sankhara has two meanings here. One meaning is with regards to the mental formation, the thoughts that arises in the mind, that is sankhara. The other meaning of sankhara is everything that is conditioned, compounded things or component things. Can you understand? Right, now next one is, yes. Yes, mental habits, or the word sankhara, sometimes we use mental habits because now you know when you sit now, there are certain thoughts that arises in the mind, and these thoughts that arise in your mind, they arises following your habit pattern. They arise according to certain pattern. No, it is the habitual tendencies, the karmic tendencies. Whatever you have thought, whatever you have studied again and again, and these things will come up again, and when they come up, they will come up again and again, again and again, and it forms a habit pattern. No, they are called sometimes they are called the mental tendencies, sankharas, the tendencies or the habit pattern, mental form. Yes. Volitionary activity, not volition only, volitionary activity. The word volition means when you study your thought, when you study the thought process, you can ask Alex Robertson, he is expert on this Abhidhamma. When you study the thought process, from the time you see an object until the time you recognize this object, there are a number of thought moments that have taken place. The first few thought moments, about 5 or 6 thought moments, it is more or less a reflex one, that is, you cannot control it. But after the 9th, I think, from the 9th till the 16th, from the 9th to the 15th, I think, there are 7, now cannot remember, there are 7 phase, 7 what you call thought moments under what you call Javana Chitta. This is the active phase of the mind, active phase of the thought. And that active phase of thought, we call this the volition. And everything that arises through volition, that means good and bad thoughts in the mind, they are volition. They are the cetana. Right? And sankhara also means here, when we talk about mental formation, sankhara also means here, when we talk about mental formation, right? It means good and bad thoughts, whether good or bad thoughts also come under sankhara, right? So we use, in English, we can use volitionary activity, the activity of the mind, the active phase of the mind. We can use the word mental formation, or sometimes we use mental habits and tendencies, mental tendencies, karmic. And it is only when you are able to watch these sankhara carefully and you notice, then you can understand your karmic tendencies, what your karmic potentials are and where it is leading you to. Let us see. This next one is vijnana. Vijnana is what? Consciousness. What is this consciousness process? Awareness, that's right. The mere awareness. How many kinds of consciousness have you got? Some people have 8. According to, yes, it is according to certain school of thought in Buddhism. They divide it into 8. But in the early teachings of the Buddha only taught about the 6 kinds of consciousness that arises through the eye consciousness, then ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and the mind consciousness. This is what in the early teachings of the Buddha. Later on, they talk about the alaya vijnana. That means all this, what you call our karma, our thought, they have as if it is in a storehouse, alaya. And so they have another consciousness, no? Alaya consciousness. And then, so What is important that you have to try to remember is this. What do you see? When you see something, what actually do you visualize? How do you visualize form? In terms of what? No. Your eyes see what? How do you see that object? In terms of what? How do you know that object? How do you recognize? How do you know it is that object? By? Your eyes cannot see, your eyes can see colors. Color, those of you who study the eye, in science, you study the eye. What is the receptive organ in the eye? What is it called? Retina, behind the eyeball. The retina, right? That retina, in the retina, what do they have there? Rods and cones. Rods and cones. And then they are able to sense light and interpret it to the different colors. So this is what your eyes see. Your eyes sees color and can see the form, the shape. That's it. Can your eyes see sound? What else? Light, see, that is. So when a visual object comes into contact with your eye, immediately there arises the eye consciousness. Your eye becomes conscious that there is something, a visual object in front of you. That's what you call the eye consciousness. Understand? The awareness there. Similarly, your ear. Your ear comes into contact with what? Sound. Sound. Ear consciousness. Nose comes into contact with smell. Then nose consciousness. Your tongue comes into contact with taste, flavor. That's called tongue consciousness. Your body comes into contact with tangible objects. Objects that can be touched, we call it tangible objects, right? That you can touch the object. Then the mind comes into contact with, in English, mental objects. The mind comes into contact with mental objects. Do you know what mental objects are in your mind? Whatever ideas, whatever things that you have in the mind, sometimes you see it as real, isn't it? When you dream, when you dream, you can see certain things in your mind. They are all your mental objects. They are conditioned things. Right. So you know consciousness process, the awareness process. And then now, these five can be divided into two. How do we divide them? We divide them in the form of. What is nama? Nama means name or mind. Actually, it is true. You can say it is name or mind. 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 This mind is, when you use name, mind, all these mental processes, it is the name, the naming of it. Identify it in the name, labeling of it. That's why you call the mind, the mental process. The mental process is that which names the things, and then Rupa is the form, the object, the form, the body, right? So what are you made up of? What are you made up of? Nama, Rupa. This is what you are made up of. Nama here refers to the Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. That is what you call Nama. Right? So you are made up of what? Mind and body. Mental and physical energies. Right? Sometimes we use the word mental and physical phenomena. Phenomena. Phenomena is the event. Whatever events that takes place within the body is called a physical phenomena. Whatever things, whatever events that takes place in the mind is called a mental phenomena. So, anything else apart from this within this fathom long body or your 5 feet long body? Anything else? What? You want to add some more? Yes.
If a person like unconscious, so there's no perception in the mind at all. So the mind itself can create karma.
If there is no perception, there is no consciousness, then it cannot generate karma. You see, what I want to tell you is this. Although we have divided for the purpose of study, analysis, we have divided the mind into, this is what? These 4 things. Feeling, perception, mental formation, consciousness is what we call the mind. Because very often we speak in terms of mind and body. And then you ask, where is the mind? You know where your mind is? Okay. You put up your hand. Put your hand like that. Clench your face hard. Where is your mind? Let go. What do you feel? When you clench your fist, what do you feel? Can you feel something? Where is your mind? Where's your mind? There, inside here. Because you feel, you're feeling here, isn't it? Right? When the feeling arises, that is a feeling process. The feeling process is the mental process. And you become aware of the feelings, your awareness of the feeling, the consciousness there. Right? And this in turn conditions the perception. You perceive that this pain, this is a painful sensation, or what kind of sensation, right? So, where is the mind? The mind is there. Or if you just clap like that, where is the mind? There. Yeah. So you know where the mind is? No? And the mind is what we call this feeling, perception, mental formation and consciousness. Please first just learn these things and later try to relate it to your practice. When your mind is calm, you should turn your attention and observe your feelings, observe the perception process. And in fact, what is felt, what you feel, whatever is felt, then you begin to perceive. What you perceive, you begin to think about, conceive in your mind. That's how you form certain ideas, you form certain concept about these things. And whatever concept that you have formulated, whatever ideas you have formulated in your mind, that you become conscious of. See? So it is actually a whole process, a whole mental process, the different phases of your mental process, no? And which you can experience these different processes, these pure different processes, when you develop your mind. Up to what level? What jhana? Arupa. Up to Arupa jhana. When the mind attains the Arupa jhana, then you begin to experience these things in its pure form. Pure form. But even now, you can also experience this thing, no? You can experience feeling process. But you have pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, like that. You can also experience perception process. You are able to cognize. When certain sound arises, immediately you cognize. This is the bird. This is the sound made by the fan. Like that. This is your perception process. And sankhara, the thoughts, wholesome, unwholesome thoughts arises in the mind. You can perceive, you can become aware of these things. Right? So this is how you can understand whatever is taking place in the mind and body. And then you try to relate and try to see it in terms of anicca, in terms of change. You see how it arises and it falls. And see whatever is arising and falling. Is it satisfactory? It is not satisfactory. It is subject to dukkha. Whatever is changing and unsatisfactory, is there a real self that you can cling to? There is no real self. That is why we say it is non-self. Then these are the three characteristics of existence: anicca, dukkha, anatta. We will talk about these things later on, elaborate on this subject. But for this morning, please try to learn these 5, what you call, aggregates. And this thing will come up again and again during the class and during the talks that you will be hearing later on. If you want to understand the process of karma, rebirth, this is important too. You have to understand this first. Understand what you are. Any questions now? Yes.
For those people who has brain damage, does that mean the mind also damage?
What is brain? What is brain? Is brain equals to mind? That's right. We do not call the brain the mind. Brain is a physical organ. A physical organ. Right? This physical organ. But there are the bases, there are the seeds of memory there in the brain cells. And together with the heart pumps the blood, and the heart is the generator, right? It is the generator, and this one is the what do you call this? There is the generator, and to work the machine, what do you have? I do not know what is called these things, and but you find that there are these two things, the heart and the brain. They generate a kind of energy, impulse, and that's how we call the mental process. The mind is the mental function arises when these two things are working together. And biological science or material science, material scientists, last time, not the modern ones, the old ones tend to think in terms, the mind in terms of the brain, in terms of the brain. But now there are there are researches done, and they realize that the brain is one thing, but the brain can, from the brain wave, the brain will emit a certain pattern. Do you know what brain waves are? Have you seen your brain waves? Have you seen? You know how when you think whatever thoughts in your mind, you know how it looks like when you record it in a machine? Just like, yes, it is just like the heartbeat in the EEG. But now they have done experiments and they put the electrode, fix it to the head, certain points on the head, and then fix it into the machine, and then you can see in the machine. And this one here, every time there is thoughts, disturbance thoughts, they can see this is one thought. Now this kind of thought arises. Then this is a period of quietness. Then again the thought, restless thought comes, this thing like that. And so by that they can see whether your mind, whether you are in concentration, whether your mind, there are thoughts, a lot of thoughts, or few thoughts like this. This is how they can know the subject, whether the subject is dreaming or not. When they ask the subject, the person, to sleep, and then they observe in the machine, then suddenly the machine works, irregular. Then they know that there is he or she is dreaming, and then ask her to wake up and says, "What do you see? What is your dream?" Then they tell. This is how they are able to know that usually, normally, average human being dreams how many times a day? A night? At least 5-6 times a day. But the only thing, you cannot remember these dreams, and that is the science of dream. Once I remember when we were invited to the university in Houston, in Texas, and there was this psychologist, and I was then with my lay teacher, and so this psychologist, he wanted to experiment, and he wanted to get the brain pattern of my lay teacher. So, we had an appointment. So what happened was that morning, sometimes I forget to tell my teacher about the appointment, and I prepared big bowl of for breakfast. I had a noodle and a lot of soup. I gave him, and then after that I went through the program with him. I said, "Oh, we have to go to the university at such a time in the morning." So we rushed there to the university to see this person, the psychologist. Then he was put in the room, and they put the electrode, and then asked him to meditate, asked my teacher to meditate. And so he was meditating, he was watching his breath and meditate, and I was outside. I can see how the pattern of the brain wave, brain wave. And then suddenly, there were a lot of irregular movements. Then the psychologists know that there is something wrong there, and then ask him, "Are you comfortable?" He said, "Yes, okay." He said, "I'm okay." And he sat down. But again, the thing is irregular. Then he asks, "Are you quite comfortable there?" He says, "Yes." And then again she sees that irregular. Then the psychologist thinks there must be something wrong. He goes inside and says, "Are you quite all right?" He says, "No, just wait for a little while. You have to remove these things. I have to go to the toilet." Then after that, my teacher comes and tells me, you are the culprit. And because I gave him too much soup that morning, and so very difficult to sit down quietly, and you cannot go against the body when the bladder is very tight, then you feel very uneasy, and then that tension arises, and even that can be seen in this, you see. That's why now, according to the study of the brain waves pattern, the pattern of the brain waves, we call this, the scientists have called this brain wave pattern alpha brain wave. When your mind is in the what you call in the state of absorption, getting into the state of absorption, samadhi, and we call that the alpha wave pattern. And when your mind is in the alpha wave pattern, and the thoughts that arises are positive, are wholesome thoughts, the mind. That's what, in Buddhism we say that when you get into jhana, when you have the right concentration, the thoughts that arises during this jhana moment, they are wholesome. They are very strong, wholesome karma, and now this is what these people say, and then after that they are also your normal kind of what you call a conscious awareness. You emit the wave pattern, I think it is beta wave, then you still have the what you call stronger what you call, when your mind, the brain pattern, they name it into the delta wave, theta wave, and so today there are many scientists now who are investigating about the function of the brain, and the latest neurological studies have found that the brain, right side and the left side of the brain, when you think a lot, when you think and try to reason out, you are using which side of the brain? The left side of the brain. But when those who have very creative mind and uses the mind, has psychic mind, ability to like clairvoyance, clairaudience, like that, it is the right side of the brain. So those who use too much of the thinking side, the left side, and you can see when they want to sit down, the head is to the right or to the left? The head. Always the head is, yes, because the nerves goes, it crosses. In this way it crosses. When it goes this way, that means the left is heavy, goes this side. No? That is why in meditation, when you meditate, it will help to balance the left and the side of the brain. Now in America, this research have gone on, and they are training little children in school to make use of not only the left side but also the right side of the brain, and so that's why they can develop their intuitive powers, and they become highly, not only very creative, very young age, but we no need to send to such school. We teach them to meditate, and they are young. So when you meditate, naturally your brain and keep your head upright. Then you will see that you use both sides, and the thought, and then you stimulate also the right side of the brain. This is the neurology, which study of the brain. Brain organ itself is not the mind, but the function, how it functions in terms, and it helps us. This brain organ has the seat of memory, and can translate the sound and interpret the sound and recognize, perceive, help us to perceive the sound. This is that sound, this is that sound, according to the memory, the program that we have put into the brain. That consciousness and perception, all this. So it is the mind, we can say, is the function. Function. Whereas the brain is the organ. The organ which produces, which brings about the functioning of the mental process. Yes. The cells. Do you know all the cells in your body? Most of the cells in your body die, but your brain cells don't die. Do you know that? The brain cells don't die. But if the brain cells die, that means sorry for you. You know, you cannot remember things. But the constituent, the nutrients that comprises in the cell, that change constantly. So that is why even the brain cell is also subject to change, although it does not die as such. There's certain parts of the brain. Yes. Sorry, the what? Yes. The cells? No. The cells all come under what? Rupa. You know the cells? Those who study cells, and when you meditate on the body, you can visualize the cell, and then you can see the cell membrane, you can see the nucleus, see the protoplasm. Then you can see this is water element, and then the vacuoles, this is the gas element, this is the you can relate it to that, the wind element. No, there's the karma. Whatever karma you do, we call these things karma, mental formation, wholesome and unwholesome mental action. We call this in the sankhara. You see, what happens is, whatever you think, whatever good or bad thoughts you generate in the mind, that good and bad thought will add on to another layer to how you have been thinking in the past. Understand? That is why it is called khanda. It is called khanda in the sense that you are heaping it, you are what you call adding new layer to it again and again. So now if you are giving in, now yesterday, last night, and if you sleep and then you don't want to get up early, although it is time you hear the alarm clock twice or so, don't want to get up, then that habit pattern of the mind, what is that? What do you call that? Mental hindrance? Sloth and torpor. So that sloth and torpor, one layer of sloth and torpor, you add in some more, right? And then after that, in the afternoon, sleep some more. You feed some more sloth and torpor. Another layer of sloth and torpor, you deposit there. So sloth and torpor very strong. That's why you are feeding the sloth and torpor. You are feeding that hindrance, so the hindrance become very strong. That is the army of Mara. Mara's army is very strong and come and attack you. Surely you fall because they are very strong. So if you want to strengthen your mind, if you want to develop your mind, you must strengthen and defeat this